Hello and welcome to today's video on maintaining and cleaning different resources and equipment that you use at forest school. So within this video I'll be sharing with you about cleaning of the Bowsaw, the knives, the Billhook and the loppers, and I'll split up into chapters so you can skip to the most appropriate video if you wish to do so. So first of all, we're looking at the Bowsaw here. The Bowsaw is a piece of equipment that you perhaps might use quite often, and without proper maintenance it can easily get a little bit torn up and you can end up with a lot of debris sitting on the blade. So I've intentionally left this actually, so hopefully you can see that just within here, look, we've got quite a bit of debris left there, and like I said, that was intentional just so I could share with you how we maintain and clean this particular piece of equipment. So I'm being careful to make sure when I'm taking the blade cover off, similar to tool talks, I'm doing it in a mindful way. I don't want to get my fingers cut by the edge of the blade here. I'm just doing it whilst I'm looking at it, so there's no surprises. And as I'm doing this, I'm also looking to see if there are any teeth that are slightly out of alignment. Have any teeth been caught on something that was cutting and are therefore not quite square anymore? So I'm just looking down now the Bowsaw. Everything looks to be in alignment here. The teeth are looking good. So that's not my priority focus here. If it was, if I need to think about changing the blade, I can do so by loosening off this part here and this part here at the end, and then changing the blade if I needed to do that. And I can loosen it also with this end point here. Okay, I also want to make sure at this point this is nice and tight, because it does twist quite easily the opposite direction, so making sure that it's tight at all times, ensuring the blade is not loose. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to clean this blade. I'm going to be doing this with a little bit of iron wool, which I have here to hand, and I'm just going to gently go up and down the blade, again looking at it at all times from my point of view, so I can see where the blades is, where the cutting edge is, making sure that I don't impact my fingers on that. So I'm just starting to clean along here. As I'm starting to clean, I'm seeing on this tarp, which is why I like to use a tarp, what's coming off. It gives you a good indication that you're cleaning it well. You see a lot of debris coming off now. Once done one side, I turn over and do the other. I've still got a bit of debris sitting in those teeth there, and I'll just start to move along carefully with that. Again, I'm making sure my fingers are away from those teeth. You could also do this with a glove. I like to see what I'm doing, I like to see where my fingers are at. And as an adult, you can probably manage this without a glove. Just looking at these little finer points here, making sure, again, no debris sitting in any of those teeth there. It's looking pretty good at this point. Just a little tidy up there, a little bit of debris remaining on it. Of course, this is what you don't want. You want to make sure when you're putting it away that you're not having to do this every single time. But for the purpose of this video, I wanted to show you what it's like if people are a little bit careless, a little bit quick with the tidying up and not really thinking too much about the process. So I've done that now. Again, looking at it again, looking nice and shiny, looking like it's fresh out of the box the first day we got it. Before we put the blade cover back on, what you can do is you can get an oil, it could be a spray, a bit like this here, or you can get an organic oil, and you want to just spray that carefully along this edge before you put it back into the protective sleeve, so that can just sit nicely, keeps your equipment nice and fresh, well lubricated, ready for the next use. I'm going to just carefully do that now. Find it a little bit easier with one of these little nozzles here. And again, you want to do this in the environment. Obviously, it's easier to do so outside so that you're not putting it all over the inside of the house. But when you get a nice run going, it's nice and easy. Flip over and do the opposite side. And we're away. Okay, super. Oh, super. Okay, and then the blade cover carefully goes back on. So this is how I maintain the integrity of this piece of equipment. So next time I use a piece of equipment, I'll obviously know that I've tidied it away in a thoughtful manner, so it should be ready for use straight out of the box. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about how we maintain the bill hook. So much in a similar way to the Bowsaw before it, we're going to start off with a little bit of the wool along that cutting edge there. Now what we can also do, and we'll talk about this more in the knife videos, we can use a whetstone and we can just make sure the integrity of that blade is kept as sharp as possible, because when you're using your equipment you want to make sure that you're using it in a safe manner, and a safe manner means having a piece of equipment that is ready to use. You don't want to be overexerting to try and get your piece of equipment to do something that it's not ordinarily doing because of poor maintenance. As I'm doing this here, I can just start to see a little bit of debris coming off here. Okay, so that's looking good. I'm going to do both sides here. This particular bill hook does actually have two sides. So it's making sure we're doing that along there. And then what we're going to do is, like I say, turn to the whetstone and I'm going to just gently sharpen along the edge using a coarse diamond whetstone, is actually what I've got at the moment, to begin with, at a 30-degree angle, pushing that along the whetstone, and then we're going to finalise it by doing a little bit more of the WD-40 and using a microfiber just to make sure that is all rubbed in and in place. So, onto the whetstone. So we use whetstone, we'll hold it about a 30-degree angle, pushing it along. We'll do both sides of this. You're keeping the whetstone moist to support with this process. Turn it over and do the same again, holding it at a 30-degree angle. If it doesn't feel right, you're probably holding it at the wrong angle. So I'm just going to be pressing along here, pressing along. Like this here. Now I'm starting with the coarsest one, and then what I can do is move to the finer whetstone as well. I actually have 4, as it turns out, different levels of coarseness, ranging from the most coarse to the least coarse, which is the finishing stone. And repeat the process. The next stage here is to apply your oil to the blade itself to make sure it keeps its integrity ready for the next use. So what I do is put my WD-40 onto my microfiber here. Okay, and then I'm just going to gently, carefully rub down here, and then again on the reverse side as well. Obviously being mindful with your fingers in a gentle manner. Then your bill hook is ready to place away, ready for its next use. Loppers, a familiar theme in terms of maintenance here. The first thing I'm doing is looking to see the state and the condition of the loppers. I'm looking at the cutting edge, looking at the blade, seeing if there's any debris, which there is left on this here, ready to be cleaned. And similar to before, we start off with the wire wool, cleaning the blades, getting the debris off, and then turning to our oil, WD-40, to lubricate and make sure that we're leaving it in a good condition, ready for its next use. Again, you could use the whetstone, a little bit more tricky to get in there, but you could use the whetstone to sharpen the blade if you felt that was necessary. Okay, so let's begin. As I'm using this, I can see the debris falling off of it. Again, I like to use a tarp just to see. That's coming up really nicely already. Opening up all the way, getting in to all the smaller spaces before turning over. Again, typically I would do this outside, but it's quite a wet day today, so I'm doing it inside in the house. Making sure there's nobody around. So that's looking really good. Just using that wire wool, just bringing that back up to the condition that we want it in. Okay, so looking here, again, I'm just checking the lubrication points here, making sure that opens and closes with ease, because especially for our younger learners who are going to be using the loppers, they want to make sure that the mechanism is doing the work for them. You don't want to rely on a huge amount of strength to get the job done. So that looks fantastic. And similar to before, I'm going to put some WD-40 onto a microfiber and just wipe that in. Okay. And then what I'll also do is put the WD-40 onto the mechanism. I will actually do this point outside because I want to make sure it's well lubricated there before I put that away. But I'm going to be using WD-40 nozzle inside the mechanism there, opening and closing it multiple times just to make sure that it's fully lubricated. But that is more of a job to that side, a little bit messier, and you want to make sure that you are opening and closing, allowing that WD-40 just to settle in there nicely. So I'm going to go outside and do it now. Okay, so the knife. This is often the piece of equipment that people have most concern over. Obviously, they're very sharp, they can be very dangerous, but what we want to make sure is the integrity of the blade is as perfect as it can be, so that when you're using the knife, it cuts very, very simply and doesn't require excessive force from the user. That's when mistakes can happen. That's where people put too much pressure on the knife and it can slip and injure. So this particular knife is actually in pretty good condition. It's had very, very minimal use. However, I will just talk you through how I maintain this knife in such a way because it's a very important piece of equipment and I like to make sure that it is maintained well. So this is obviously one example of a knife. I'll pop that back in there for the moment. Another example, one that children might start off with, is this smaller bladed knife here, and again it can be maintained in the same way. So you get your whetstones. I've got my diamond whetstones here and I put them down in order of coarseness. And then what I do is I work my way along if needed. Obviously, if the blade's had a lot of recent use, you're going to start with the most coarse whetstone and then move through to the finer. In the case of this knife here, it doesn't require a huge amount of use on the most coarse whetstone because it is in fantastic condition. However, for this purpose of demonstration, I will show you what you need to do. So it's very important that you hold it at a 30-degree angle. I'm keeping my hands away, obviously, from the cutting edge. I'm keeping my hand behind the blade, and I'm moving forward in this motion here, up the whetstone. I like to continue to go forwards. I don't come back. I go forwards, forwards, and forwards, and then we'll make sure you're then obviously using the opposite side of the blade to do the same thing. So I'll just demonstrate for you how we use this on the whetstone. So I'm placing it at a 30 angle, I'm moving it forwards down the whetstone here, down the whetstone. I like to do it 5 times. And for demonstration purposes, I will just move down the stones as you would do it with a knife that needed this as part of the maintenance process. Maybe after some heavy use. Move that whetstone out of the way there. I go down, 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 and then move along and do the same thing on these 2 final whetstones here. Obviously I would use both sides, making sure the blade is receiving the same treatment to both sides of it. And I go down this one. What I'll make sure I do also is capture all parts of the blade. So if I feel like I'm going down the centre of the blade, I then need to move across and just capture that end point there. Capture that end point. And then if I need to, I can obviously use this part here as well and capture the part nearest the handle. And I move along, making sure these maintain a moistness throughout. 1, 2, 3. If I need to angle it to capture a different part of the blade, I can do that off to one side. Like so. If you've got a surface that has become a little bit wet and the stone's starting to move, you can obviously do this with one hand as well. Once you've got your knife secure, you can just use a guiding hand here to hold down a whetstone and so forth. Okay, that's how to maintain it here. Checking the blade. Now some people say that you should then be able to get a piece of paper and drop it and it should cut easily on it, but I can obviously see from here the condition of it. It's lovely and shiny. And that blade is ready, once dry, and I'll just gently dry it with a microfiber, again being very, very careful, to go back into the sheath for its next use. So that's how I maintain these pieces of equipment for forest school use. Like I said, it's very important, especially with younger learners, to make sure your equipment is ready for use, and they shouldn't have to be exerting a huge amount of pressure and strength on any of the pieces of equipment to do the job that they were purpose built for.